Hi there, friends. Ever notice how getting older comes with more than just gray hair and a few extra candles on the cake? Little habits sneak in, ones we don't even see, that can push folks away and make our golden years feel a little less golden. Things like grumbling about the weather or saying no thanks to a helping hand. Nobody warns us, but they can make life lonelier than it needs to be. Here's the good news. We can change them. Today, we've got 10 sneaky habits that creep up as we age, and simple ways to kick 'em out the door. Stick with me, because number 7, it's a real eye-opener, and most folks don't catch it till it's too late. Let's start with a story close to home. This is Marilyn, a 71-year-old retired librarian from Ohio. Back in the day, she was the queen of her cul-de-sac, swapping stories over iced tea, suggesting Gone with the Wind to anyone who'd listen, and baking cookies that'd make Betty Crocker jealous. But over time, things shifted. Neighbors stopped knocking. Her phone sat quiet. Even her grandkids' visits got shorter. Marilyn wondered, did I miss something? Yep, she did. Little habits had built a wall around her. Let's break 'em down and see how she tore it down, one by one. Marilyn didn't start out intending to be the neighborhood grouch, honest. But oh boy, did she have a habit that could sour milk. Every single morning she'd creak out of bed, press a hand to that stiff, aching back, and let out a groan loud enough to wake the rooster. Then came the muttering. Everything's falling to pieces. My knees crack like old floorboards. The news is a dumpster fire, and don't get me started on this upside-down world. It wasn't just a quick grumble either. She'd carry that dark cloud right into her day. She'd call up her pals, and before they could say hello, she'd launch into a full-blown rant. The weather's gloomy, the prices at the grocery store are ridiculous, and I swear the mailman's late again. Poor Marilyn didn't see it, but that negativity was like a bad cold, contagious and exhausting. Pretty soon, her friends started screening her calls, leaving her wondering why the line was always busy. Let's be real, folks. Nobody wants to sip their morning coffee with a side of doom and gloom. But here's the good news. There's a fix. Kick off your day with a little pep in your step. Try saying, I'm still here, the sun's up, and that coffee's brewing. Give those gripes their moment. Set a timer for 2 minutes if you have to, then pivot hard. Ask yourself, what's good today? Marilyn gave it a shot, and instead of her usual complaints, she started small. You know, that sunset last night was downright gorgeous, all pink and gold. Next thing you know, her buddies weren't dodging her anymore. They were sticking around, swapping stories of their own. It's funny how a little shift can turn the whole day around. So, what's your trick to shake off the morning blahs? Drop it in the comments. We're all ears, friends. Back in the day, Marilyn was a sight to behold. She'd step out in those sassy polka-dot dresses that twirled just right, a touch of White Shoulder's perfume trailing behind her like a sweet hello. Folks couldn't help but smile when she passed by. But lately, well, she'd traded it all for the pajama life, those faded, comfy sets with the stretched-out elastic. Morning to night, she'd shuffle around in them, thinking, who's gonna see me anyway? The cat doesn't care. At first, it felt like a little treat, but then she noticed something. The neighbors stopped waving as much. The cashier at the corner store didn't chat her up anymore, and even the mailman zipped by without a nod. Marilyn started feeling like a ghost in her own life, washed out, like an old photo left in the sun too long. Here's the fix, friends. put a little pep back in your step every single day. Doesn't have to be fancy. Just slide into something that makes you feel like you. Maybe it's that cozy sweater your niece always compliments, or a pair of slacks with a crisp button-up. Run a comb through your hair. Dab on a splash of your favorite scent. It's like flipping the on switch for your spirit. Marilyn decided to try it one morning. She fished out her old pearl necklace, the one she hadn't worn in years, slipped on a blouse with a bit of color, and wouldn't you know it? She caught herself in the mirror and thought, "Well, hello there, stranger. I feel like $1,000,000. Suddenly, the world noticed her again, and she noticed herself too. So, what's your go-to that makes you shine, folks? Tell us below in the comments. We'd love to hear what lights you up. Marilyn used to be the queen of the phone call. Nobody could tell a story like she could, her voice full of warmth and mischief. But when her family traded those long chats for quick texts, she wasn't having it. "Pick up the darn phone," she'd grumble, tossing her hands in the air. "I'm not about to squint at a screen just to hear about your day." She dug her heels in hard, refusing to join the texting brigade. But here's the kicker. That stubborn streak meant she missed out big time. Little Timmy took his first wobbly steps, and the family sent a video zipping through the group chat. Except Marilyn didn't see it. She was out of the loop, all because she wouldn't budge an inch. It stung when she finally heard about it weeks later, like she'd been sidelined in her own story. But there's a way to turn it around, folks. Swap out that "nope, not for me" attitude for a simple "all right, I'll give it a whirl." Let the young ones, your kids, grandkids, or even that tech-savvy neighbor show you the ropes. Trust me, it's more fun than you think. Marilyn finally caved one day, and with her daughter's help, she pecked out her very first text. LOL, short and sweet. When the family group chat lit up with cheers and clapping emojis, she couldn't help but laugh right along with them. It was like a little victory dance in her kitchen. Now she's hooked, swapping messages and even tossing in a smiley face or two. So, what about you? Tried a new trick lately that surprised you? Share it in the comments below. We're dying to hear your stories. Marilyn's house used to be her pride and joy, but somewhere along the line, it turned into a museum of yesterday. Picture this. Faded birthday cards from 1982 pinned to the fridge, stacks of skirts she swore she'd fit into again, even though the waistbands laughed at the idea, and knickknacks from every flea market she'd ever wandered through. It wasn't just cluttered. It was like stepping into a time capsule where every corner held a memory, but not the good kind. Her kids called it the maze, and honestly, they weren't wrong. You couldn't sit down without shifting a pile of old magazines, and the dust bunnies were staging a takeover. It didn't feel homey anymore. It felt heavy, like the past was crowding out the present. Even her bridge club stopped coming over. Nobody wanted to navigate the obstacle course just for a hand of cards. Here's the fix, friends. Take it one little corner at a time. Pick up an item and ask yourself, do I really love this, or am I just holding on out of habit? If it's worn out or done its time, pitch it. If it's still got some life left, pass it along to someone who'd appreciate it. Marilyn started small. She tackled her coat closet one afternoon, sorting through decades of wool and polyester. She donated a pile of old coats to the local shelter, and you know what? She felt pounds lighter, like she'd shed more than just fabric. Next thing you know, her living room had space to breathe again, and her bridge club was back, shuffling cards and swapping laughs over tea. It's amazing what a little clearing out can do. So, what about you? What have you let go of lately that made your space feel like home again? Drop it in the comments. We'd love to hear your decluttering wins. Marilyn always thought of herself as a decent soul, someone who'd lend a hand or share a laugh without a second thought. But one day, she caught herself in a moment she wasn't proud of. She was at the grocery store, arms crossed, watching a young cashier fumble with her coupons and a tricky jar of pickles. The line was creeping along, and before she knew it, Marilyn snapped, "Come on, move it along already." The words flew out sharp and mean, and when that poor kid's face turned beet red, stammering an apology, it hit her like a ton of bricks. She'd turned into that snippy old grump she swore she'd never be. It wasn't just impatience. It was a habit of letting little frustrations boil over, and she didn't like the reflection staring back at her. Here's how to flip it, folks. Next time you feel that crankiness bubbling up, take a deep breath, right down to your toes, and let it out slow. Then flash a smile and say something gentle like, "No rush, hun, you're doing fine." It's amazing how a dab of kindness can warm up the whole room, including your own heart. Marilyn gave it a go the next time she was in line. The cashier, a different kid, just as nervous, dropped her change, and instead of huffing, she chuckled and said, "Take your time, sweetie. I've got nowhere to be." The kid looked up, grinned ear to ear, and suddenly the air felt lighter for both of them. It's a small shift, but it's mighty. So, what about you? Ever caught yourself getting crabby and turned it around? How'd you soften up? Share your story in the comments. We're all in this together. Marilyn had a gift, no doubt about it. She could spin a yarn that'd keep you hooked from the first word. Tales of her wild youth, the time she outsmarted a tricky car salesman, or how she perfected her peach cobbler recipe. She'd go on, her voice dancing with every detail. Trouble was, she loved the spotlight so much that her daughter couldn't squeeze a syllable in edgewise. Every phone call turned into Marilyn's one-woman show, and soon enough, those chats started shrinking. Her girl would mumble a quick, "Gotta go, Mom," and hang up, leaving Marilyn puzzled. She didn't see it at first, but she wasn't tuning in. She was too busy talking to hear what mattered on the other end of the line. It was like she'd forgotten that a conversation's a two-way street. Here's the fix, friends. Every now and then, zip those lips and toss out a simple, "So, what's cooking with you?" Then, and this is the magic part, really listen. Don't just nod while planning your next story. Let their words sink in. Marilyn tried it one evening when her daughter called. Instead of launching into her usual saga, she asked, "How's that job of yours going?" and buttoned up. Her girl unloaded about a tough week at work, deadlines, a cranky boss, the whole mess, and Marilyn just soaked it in, throwing in a "that sounds rough" here and there. By the end, her daughter sighed. "Thanks for listening, Mom," and their talks turned cozy again, like old times over a shared quilt. It's a small tweak, but it builds bridges. So, what about you? Are you the big talker or the quiet listener? Now, here's the big one. Marilyn was as stubborn as a mule when it came to doing things her way. Picture her hauling grocery bags from the car, arms trembling under the weight of canned goods and a gallon of milk, her back screaming with every step. A neighbor would pop over and say, "Let me give you a hand," and she'd wave them off with a brisk, "I'm fine, I've got it." Except she wasn't fine, not even close. By the time she wrestled those bags into the kitchen, her back was staging a full-on rebellion, and she'd collapse into her chair, wincing. Worse than the ache, though, was the quiet sting of loneliness that crept in. She'd pushed folks away so hard that they stopped offering, and she was left wondering why her doorbell didn't ring anymore. That fierce independence was costing her more than she'd bargained for. Here's the fix, folks. It's simpler than you think. Next time someone offers a hand, just say, "Sure, thanks." Or, better yet, if you're struggling, pipe up with, "Hey, could you grab that for me?" It's not waving a white flag. It's smart, plain, and simple. Marilyn gave it a shot one day when her neighbor caught her juggling a sack of potatoes. Instead of her usual brush-off, she nodded and said, "You know, I'd appreciate that." The neighbor lit up, carted those spuds inside, and lingered for a chat over iced tea. Marilyn felt a warmth she hadn't in ages, like she wasn't just unloading groceries, but unloading a little of that lonesome weight, too. It takes guts to let folks in, no doubt about it. So, what's your take? Is it tough for you to accept a little help now and then? Spill it in the comments. We're all ears, friends. Marilyn was a saver through and through. Penny pinching was practically her middle name. So, when her old pal floated the idea of a road trip, just a little jaunt to catch some fresh air and scenery, Marilyn shut it down fast. Too pricey, she declared, tallying up gas and snacks in her head like she was guarding Fort Knox. She stayed home, smug about her frugality, but then the photos started trickling in. Her friend grinning by a lake, the two of them missing from a goofy roadside selfie. She'd skipped out on the giggles, the late-night chats, the kind of memories that stick with you. Sure, saving's smart, we all know that, but living, that's the real sweetness, and Marilyn was starting to feel the sour pang of what she'd let slip by. Here's the fix, friends. Carve out a little room for joy. Start a treat jar. Tuck away a few bucks here and there for something that lights you up. Could be coffee with a buddy at that diner you love, or a night curled up with Matlock reruns and a bowl of popcorn. Marilyn finally said yes the next time around. She dusted off her treat jar, hopped in her friend's car, and they rumbled off to a campsite an hour away. That night, toasting marshmallows over a crackling fire, she laughed so hard her sides hurt, worth every penny she'd worried about. It's not about busting the bank, it's about feeding your soul a little. So, what's your treat, folks? What little thing do you splurge on that makes your day brighter? Drop it in the comments. We'd love to hear what keeps you smiling. Marilyn was tough as nails, or so she liked to think. When her eyes started getting blurry, she'd squint at the fine print on her soup cans and shrug it off with a gruff, "Hey, just old age creeping in. No big deal." She'd laugh it away, figuring a little fuzziness was par for the course after all those birthdays. But then, one afternoon, hurrying down her porch steps to grab the mail, she misjudged a blurry edge and took a tumble, right into the azalea bush. Scraped knees, a bruised ego, and a racing heart later, it scared her straight. Those little clues she'd been brushing off weren't just annoyances, they were warning bells, and she'd been too stubborn to listen. That fall was a wake-up call she couldn't ignore. Here's the fix, folks. Don't wait for a tumble to take notice. Book that checkup. Yes, even if it's a hassle. And spill the beans to your doc about every little twinge, ache, or blur. It's not whining. It's wisdom. Marilyn finally did it after dusting off the dirt from her spill. She got her eyes checked, nabbed a new pair of glasses, and, while she was at it, mentioned that stiff knee she'd been ignoring. Next thing you know, she joined a walking group at the community center. Slow at first, but soon she was stepping lively, feeling spry and chatting up new friends. Paying attention paid off big time. So, what about you? Ever ignored a sign your body was waving at you? What finally woke you up? Share it in the comments. We're all here to learn from each other. Maraline's days had started to feel like a gray rerun. Same old, with no spark to shake things up. She'd shuffle through her routine, flipping through the paper or staring out the window. But the laughs, the lightness, they'd gone missing, leaving her world a little too quiet, a little too dull. Then, one rainy afternoon, she flipped on the TV and stumbled across an old Carol Burnett skit. Tim Conway bumbling around as that clumsy dentist, Carol tugging her ear with that sly grin. Maraline couldn't help it. She snorted, then cackled, then laughed so hard she had to clutch her sides. It was like someone flipped a switch. Suddenly, the gloom didn't stand a chance. Here's the fix, friends. Sprinkle some joy into your days on purpose. Cue up a classic. Maybe Lucy and Ethel stuffing chocolates down their shirts. Or sway to Sinatra crooning, "Fly Me to the Moon." Make it a rule. Giggle at least once a day. Maraline took it further. She dug out her old records, dropped the needle on Moon River, and started swaying in her kitchen, twirling like she was 20 again. That lightness stuck with her, and she felt young, not just in years, but in spirit. It's the little things that bring the big lift. So, tell us, what was your last big laugh? Look at Maraline now, grumpiness gone, sparkle back, laughing with the gang. She ditched these 10 habits and found her groove. Friends call, grandkids visit, and she's humming again. You can too. Which habit's yours to shake? Pick one. Start today. Love this? Tap that like button, hit subscribe, and pass it to a pal who needs a nudge. Let's keep the good times rolling. See you next week.